Hi, so today's video is going to be a video looking at something called the Trusted News Initiative. And the Trusted News Initiative is a real threat to a democratic country, in my opinion, which likes to have and needs to have a multiplicity of voices, a plurality of opinions. Because the truth is rarely black or white. The truth that's presented to us is sometimes not the truth at all. Sometimes there's all sorts of agendas at play within journalism, within all areas of society. There's all sorts of politics and weird machinations going on. That's not conspiracy theory. That's just probably how things are. But of course, that's just my opinion. So to begin, I don't know if you'd heard of the Trusted News Initiative. I hadn't. And what they are is it's a group of various media companies that have banded together to combat disinformation. It was set up by a lady called Jessica Cecil, who was an ex-employee of the BBC. They set it up in 2020, allegedly to sort of combat disinformation. I think it was initially set up to combat disinformation when it comes to things, important things like elections, probably because of Trump getting in, and they were quite worried about it, I imagine. However, it's since been used for things like vaccine disinformation, and if that's starting to ring alarm bells in your head, I think it should. So basically, this ex-BBC employee started a group, Trusted News Initiative. As Russell Brand says, anything with the word trusted in the title is probably something you shouldn't trust. And an awful lot of companies have probably signed up to this. The BBC are part of it. The Associated News Network are part of it. And they seek to stamp out and eradicate disinformation wherever they find it. They had a part to play during the pandemic with all of the COVID information and misinformation out there, and the vaccine misinformation. Now, some misinformation was obviously very silly indeed. So you might say, well, maybe it was a good idea to combat all the silliness. But I think if you look at it just from that perspective, you're missing a really important point. Things are often quite nuanced, and rarely is there just a one-party line that's correct. Rarely is there an objective truth which is simple and has no nuance within it. This is one of Russell Brand's ongoing themes that he talks about in his videos. He just wants to get people to utilise their critical thinking skills a bit more and to say, look, the truth is rarely as it's presented, and it's often much more complex. There's an awful lot more going on. So too with the vaccines. We've got a real problem when it comes to vaccine information or vaccine disinformation. The vaccines themselves obviously made a small handful of companies an awful lot of money, and their shareholders potentially. So if profit comes into play, we know, don't we, that companies will often put primacy of profit over and above the needs of the people. It's happened in many, many cases. It will probably carry on happening. And when it comes to vaccine disinformation, well, that is not a simple black and white issue necessarily, is it? Because these vaccines weren't tested for that long necessarily. And the goalposts did keep changing. And we were given information at the beginning which doesn't seem to correlate with information now, such as when we were told, if you have the vaccine, you won't transmit the virus so much. It will be less transmissible. Now we know that's absolute bullshit now, but at the time we thought that was true because that's what the media reported. There's going to be all sorts of other elements as well. We're told the vaccines we are told repeatedly that the vaccines are safe. by people who don't themselves necessarily know that the vaccines are absolutely safe in all cases, and so on and so forth. You know, there seems to be some anecdotal evidence to suggest that they cause a few more problems than perhaps were initially admitted. That's speculative, it's conjecture, it's not fact. However, do we need a multiplicity of voices around this subject? I'd say absolutely we do, because we're injecting a substance into our body and we have to trust that it's absolutely right. So we want as much as a thorough investigation as possible. And that means hearing all sides of an argument. It isn't enough to just stamp out any opposing views. Now, Jessica Cecil set this up potentially with some noble ideas. You know, maybe there's an interview of her in a magazine online or some sort of online publication, and she's talking about the Capitol riots regarding Trump. So I think she had the noble aim that, you know, it can be quite a dangerous world out there with an awful lot of voices online, etc. And that might lead people astray in some instances. Now, obviously, with the vaccines as well, did they initially save lives? Yes, of course they did. You know, the stats absolutely seem to point to that. And she says in the interview that saving lives can come with absolutely helping the public, you know, giving them the correct information. If the correct information isn't always given, or there is an awful lot of misinformation, her argument is sometimes that can steer people down the wrong road, and sometimes that might actually kill people in some instances. So it sort of started off with noble aims, but then I think it veers off course, because when you start to dabble, when you start to meddle in the idea of what's true, and you start to try to present a particular line, then I think you're going to run into problems very quickly, and you're going to overstep the mark potentially in many different areas. Now, in this particular interview, and I'll probably link to it, or, you know, maybe put some bits up on screen, she also says that you need, you know, she feels she's doing a service to people, because people need help to make decisions. They need help to work out what's true and what isn't true, and what's real and what isn't real, type of thing. And I'm like, you what? We can't be trusted to read things for ourselves. We might go a bit mental, like the spoons sticking onto people. You know, well, that's a small minority, and you're always going to have a small minority of crazy people. But if you try to combat that by just having a one-party line, just a one truth, and you cut out all dissenting voices, you're going to run into real trouble as to what truth actually is. Anyway, what are you presenting to people? How do you know that what you're presenting to people is the truth? The truth. This magical, godlike, objective truth, you know. There might be truth in it, but things are rarely absolute, aren't they? They're often a little bit nuanced. There's often, you know, there could be elements of truth to it. So with the vaccines, for example, we can say, yes, certainly they did save lives. However, did they also cause myriad problems, some of which we don't yet know, because the yellow card system here in the UK may not have reported all of the problems. That is to say, a lot of people themselves may not have reported all of their side effects. So I just wanted to do another little bit of the video here, just because Elon Musk has also said that the vaccine nearly landed him in hospital. I just caught the headline today, and he said that was because of the third vaccine that did it. Now, I first caught this article in the Epoch Times, and then I just thought I'd have a look at what mainstream media was saying, and they've got a different spin on it. Their take is that he's complaining. This was in The Independent. I'll put a little snippet up of the Independent article. The Independent say it's feeding into the same beliefs that his followers have, that the immunisation is dangerous. Now, isn't that an interesting bit of spin there. You know, it's like the belief, it isn't real. He didn't really go to hospital because of the shot. It's a belief, it's a delusion. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. The vaccines are safe. Don't worry. You know, now I'm not saying they are absolutely not safe. I'm just saying that in some instances, it doesn't look like they are that safe, and that I think this is underreported. I think this is potentially flown under the radar of people conducting tests. I don't think they're quite as rare as the media wants to paint this. So again, the media, with a trusted news initiative, stamping out misinformation wherever it may lead, this is perhaps a great example of overreach on their part. He's reported something and they are absolutely trying to play it down. You know, they're not necessarily right to do so. They aren't the great arbiters of right or wrong. They just bring us the news. They are supposed to be unbiased. We can do the rest. We can disseminate the news ourselves. We should be trusted to do this. So yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. And again, the media spin on it. I hardly ever read mainstream media anymore, purely because of this spin that you find in many stories like this. It's very hard to just find a bit of unbiased news, to just say, yes, Elon Musk himself had problems because of the shot. He didn't reveal what those problems were. The end. Not he's complaining, he's feeding into a belief, which makes it sound a bit delusional. This is spin. This is conjecture, spin. It's trying to steer us into a particular way of thinking. It's not right. It's not what the news should be for, in my opinion, of course. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap things up now. Just to say, I don't think we're headed into some very good times, are we? We know freedom of speech online is all but dead, and it's very difficult to make videos on platforms such as this one without people jumping on you and saying, it's misinformation, etc. Well, now it seems that the news itself is being governed by ever more tight controls, and the plurality of voices, of different opinions and different thoughts is being squashed and squeezed, and we're being manipulated in how we should think because they don't trust us to come up with our own ideas and to be able to form our own thoughts and opinions. And that's so important in a democracy. We're not China, not yet. So how do you feel about all this? Drop me a comment below if you want to. And yeah, and I'll leave it there. I'll wrap it up here. I hope you're having a really good day. I hope you're staying safe in the UK because we've got Storm Agnes about to hit. But yeah, I think just be really aware of what's going on out there with regards to the news, which is just basically a group of people who've got together and who've decided this is what we shall think today, regardless of if it's true. And so yeah, that's me for today. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe. Take care. Bye.